Blood dripped from Dr. Jamal Washington's split lip as airport security dragged him away. Just moments earlier, he'd been Wingspan Airlines' most valued diamond customer. Now he was a criminal. All because he refused to give up his first-class seat to a white businessman. Before I dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever witnessed injustice and wanted to do something about it. How would you react if you saw someone being removed from their rightful seat just because of the color of their skin? Let me take you through the journey of a man whose stand against discrimination changed an entire industry. Jamal Washington never had it easy. Growing up in the roughest neighborhood of South Chicago, he learned early that he would have to work twice as hard to get half as far. His mother, a hospital janitor, worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table after his father was wrongfully imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. Those early years taught Jamal 2 crucial lessons: education was his only ticket out, and the system was rigged against people who looked like him. By 16, Jamal had become a self-taught coding prodigy, staying late at the community center to use their outdated computers since he couldn't afford one at home. His exceptional talents earned him a full scholarship to MIT, where he graduated with dual degrees in computer science and business administration, both with highest honors. But even with his impressive credentials, Jamal faced rejection after rejection from top tech companies. They always found some reason, Jamal would later tell reporters. Not enough experience, not the right cultural fit. But I could see it in their eyes when I walked into interview rooms. That split second of surprise that told me they weren't expecting someone who looked like me. After 27 rejections, Jamal decided to create his own opportunity. Using the small inheritance his grandmother left him, he founded CyberShield from his studio apartment. The company specialized in advanced cybersecurity solutions at a time when major corporations were experiencing unprecedented data breaches. Jamal's innovative algorithms could detect intrusion attempts that other security systems missed. His big break came when a Fortune 500 company suffered a massive breach that every other security provider failed to prevent. They reluctantly gave the young, unknown company a chance, and CyberShield identified and neutralized the threat within hours. Word spread quickly, and within 3 years, Jamal's client list included some of the biggest names in banking, healthcare, and government. CyberShield's meteoric rise wasn't without obstacles. Investors would often speak to Jamal's white employees first, assuming they were in charge. At industry conferences, he was mistaken for support staff or security rather than the CEO of a billion-dollar company. Each slight, each microaggression, Jamal cataloged in his mind but never let derail his focus. During this time, Jamal formed an unlikely friendship with Thomas Bailey, a veteran white executive who had seen Jamal present at a tech conference and recognized his brilliance. Thomas became an informal mentor, offering Jamal the unwritten rulebook for black executives. Keep your emotions in check, even when they provoke you, Thomas advised during one of their regular lunches. Document everything. Have witnesses for important conversations. Dress impeccably, speak perfectly, arrive early for everything. It's not fair, but you'll be judged by different standards. Jamal took these lessons to heart, building a reputation for meticulous professionalism. His suits were custom-tailored, his language precise, his punctuality legendary. He learned to navigate the corporate world while staying true to his values, balancing authenticity with strategic accommodation. By 35, Jamal had transformed CyberShield into a billion-dollar enterprise with offices in 12 countries. The company employed over 5,000 people and had revolutionized how corporations protected their data. Industry publications dubbed him The Guardian, highlighting both his cybersecurity innovations and his efforts to bring more people of color into the tech industry. When an opportunity arose to expand into the European market through a partnership with NetSecure, a major Dutch security firm, Jamal knew this could cement CyberShield's global dominance. The meeting with potential investors was scheduled in New York, and given its importance, Jamal was determined to arrive well-rested and prepared. "Book me on Wingspan Airlines," he told his assistant, Zora Williams. "First class, window seat if possible. I'll need to review documents and get some sleep before the meeting." You've got enough miles for diamond status now, Zora noted as she made the arrangements. This will be your first flight with all the VIP privileges. Jamal smiled at the thought. After hundreds of flights in cramped economy seats during the early days of building his company, he had finally reached a level where he could travel comfortably. The diamond status came with priority boarding, exclusive lounge access, and personalized service, small comforts that would help him arrive ready for the most important meeting of his career. Confirmation received, Zora announced. You're in seat 1A. The best seat on the plane. Little did Jamal know that this flight would change not just his company's trajectory, but his entire life's purpose, in ways he could never have anticipated. The morning of the flight, Jamal arrived at O'Hare International Airport 3 hours early, a habit ingrained from years of random, additional security screenings. Today proved no different. Despite his tailored suit, diamond cufflinks, and platinum credit cards, TSA pulled him aside for an additional screening while waving through other business travelers. "Sir, we'll need to check your laptop separately," the agent said, eyeing Jamal's designer briefcase with suspicion. Of course, Jamal replied with practiced calm, even as he noticed a white executive with 3 devices walk through without a second glance. After clearing security, Jamal approached the Wingspan Airlines premium check-in counter. The attendant glanced up, then back down at her computer. "Economy check-in is over there, sir," she said without looking at his reservation. "I'm flying first class," Jamal corrected politely. "Diamond status member." Her eyebrows raised slightly as she verified his information. "Oh. I see. My apologies, Dr. Washington." The apology came without eye contact as she processed his boarding pass. "Your Diamond Lounge is near Gate B18. Boarding begins in 90 minutes. The Wingspan Diamond Lounge represented an exclusive sanctuary few travelers ever experienced. With its private meeting rooms, gourmet buffet, and premium open bar, it catered to the airline's highest-spending customers. As Jamal scanned his boarding pass at the entrance, the host's smile faltered momentarily. "First time in our lounge, Dr. Washington?" she asked, studying his profile on her screen. "Yes, just reached diamond status last month." "I'll need to see a photo ID as well, please." Security protocols. Jamal provided his driver's license, noting that other guests were entering with just a boarding pass scan. Once inside, he selected a quiet corner seat and opened his laptop to review the investor presentation. He couldn't help but notice the sideways glances from other lounge occupants, predominantly older white men in similar business attire. A flight attendant approached his table. Her name tag read, Karen Hoffman. "Can I bring you something to drink, sir?" she asked with professional courtesy. "Sparkling water with lime would be great, thank you." As she returned with his drink, Karen lingered a moment. "I'll be working your flight today. Wingspan is proud to serve our Diamond members. If there's anything you need, just ask." Her words were welcoming, but Jamal noticed her eyes scanning his expensive watch, his designer shoes, his top-tier laptop, as if mentally confirming he belonged in this space. When boarding was announced, Jamal gathered his belongings and proceeded to the gate. As a Diamond member, he was entitled to board first. The gate agent's announcement confirmed this. "We now welcome our active military members and Diamond status passengers to board." Jamal stepped forward, but the gate agent hesitated before scanning his pass. "Diamond boarding now, sir. Are you sure you're in the right group?" "Yes," Jamal replied evenly, presenting his boarding pass. "Seat 1A." The agent scanned his pass, looking slightly surprised when the system confirmed his status. "Enjoy your flight, Dr. Washington." The first-class cabin of the Boeing 787 gleamed with luxury, just 8 spacious pods arranged in 2 rows, each offering privacy, fully reclining seats, and personal service. Jamal located 1A, a prime window seat in the first row with extra legroom and no neighbors in front. He stored his briefcase, settled into the plush leather seat, and accepted a pre-departure champagne from Karen, who was now working the cabin. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Washington," she said. "We're honored to have you flying with us today." The other first-class passengers boarded, all white, all treated with the casual familiarity of regular customers. Karen greeted several by name without checking their boarding passes. The cabin was half full when a middle-aged white man in an expensive but rumpled suit boarded. His face was flushed, his manner entitled as he surveyed the cabin. This was Maxwell Whitfield, though Jamal wouldn't learn his name until later. Maxwell stopped directly beside Jamal's seat, frowning. "Excuse me," he said, not to Jamal but to Karen who was passing by. "There seems to be a mistake. I always sit in 1A. Karen immediately turned to Jamal, not Maxwell. "Sir, could I see your boarding pass again?" Jamal retrieved his boarding pass from his jacket pocket and presented it. "Seat 1A, as assigned." Karen examined it and frowned. "That's correct, but..." She turned to Maxwell. "Mr. Whitfield, it seems there was a system change. Your usual seat was reassigned. You're in 2C today, just across the aisle in the second row." Maxwell's face darkened. "That's unacceptable. I specifically need a window seat. I get claustrophobic in the aisle." "I understand, sir, but 2C was the only seat available when you checked in. The flight is completely full." Maxwell lowered his voice but remained audible. "Look, I'm sure this gentleman wouldn't mind moving. I've been flying this route weekly for 15 years. Karen turned to Jamal with an expectant smile. "Dr. Washington, would you mind accommodating Mr. Whitfield? He's one of our most valued customers." The implication was clear, despite Jamal's diamond status, he was not considered equally valued. "I'm sorry," Jamal said firmly but politely, "but I specifically selected this seat. I have work to prepare before an important meeting." Karen's smile tightened. "Perhaps you could work just as well in 2C. It would be a great courtesy to Mr. Whitfield." "My seat assignment is 1A, Jamal reiterated. "I'd like to stay in my assigned seat." Maxwell's face flushed darker. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "I can't believe this is happening." He stormed to his assigned seat in 2C, shooting glares toward Jamal. Karen hovered uncertainly between them before continuing her preparations. As the final passengers boarded, Jamal could see Maxwell engaged in an intense whispered conversation with another flight attendant. Minutes later, as the doors were about to close, the captain emerged from the cockpit. Captain Brad Stevens was tall with silver hair and the confident bearing of a man accustomed to authority. He surveyed the cabin before approaching Jamal's seat. "Sir," he said without introducing himself, "I understand there's a seating issue." "There's no issue from my perspective," Jamal replied calmly. "I'm in my assigned seat." The captain glanced toward Maxwell, who was watching the interaction intently. "We try to accommodate our regular customers' preferences. Mr. Whitfield flies with us weekly and has medical reasons for needing a window seat." "I understand," Jamal said, "but I also booked this specific seat for my own reasons. I have diamond status and confirmed this seat assignment when booking." The captain's expression hardened slightly. "Sir, as the captain, I have final authority over this aircraft. I'm asking you to switch seats as a courtesy to a loyal customer." The first-class cabin had gone silent. Other passengers were watching the confrontation with uncomfortable expressions. Jamal noticed several reaching for their phones. "Captain," Jamal said, his voice steady despite his rising anger, "I respect your authority over flight safety matters, but seat assignments are handled by your ticketing system, which assigned me seat 1A. Unless there's a safety reason for me to move, I'm staying in my assigned seat." It was a turning point. In that moment, Jamal made a decision that would ultimately cost him his seat but would expose a system of discrimination that had operated in shadows for decades. Captain Stevens' face hardened as he loomed over Jamal. "Sir, when I make a request on my aircraft, it's not optional." "I've shown you my boarding pass," Jamal replied, maintaining his composure. This is my assigned seat. I'm not being disruptive, I'm simply occupying the seat I paid for. By now, several passengers had begun recording the interaction on their phones. The captain noticed but seemed undeterred. "Karen," he called to the flight attendant, "please verify this passenger's boarding information." Karen approached with a tablet. "Dr. Washington is confirmed for seat 1A, she admitted reluctantly. The captain barely glanced at the confirmation. "That may be what the computer says, but we have a situation that requires adjustment. Mr. Whitfield needs a window seat for medical reasons." "Then perhaps Mr. Whitfield should have booked a window seat," Jamal suggested reasonably. "Or the airline could upgrade another passenger from business class to give him a window seat there." From across the aisle, Maxwell Whitfield injected, "I shouldn't have to move. I've been flying this route every week for 15 years. Everyone knows I sit in 1A. His voice carried a sense of indignation that someone had dared to disrupt his routine. Jamal turned to face him directly. "I understand you're a regular passenger, Mr. Whitfield, but that doesn't entitle you to my seat. I also fly frequently, enough to earn diamond status, and I booked this seat specifically." The confrontation was escalating. Captain Stevens gestured to Karen and two other flight attendants, who quickly converged around Jamal's seat, creating a wall of uniformed staff. "Sir," the captain said, his voice now carrying through the entire first-class cabin, "this is your final opportunity to change seats voluntarily before I'm forced to take further action." Jamal felt every eye on him. In that moment, he thought of his father, wrongfully imprisoned because he'd stood his ground against injustice. He thought of every time he'd swallowed his pride and accepted unfair treatment to keep the peace. "Not today. Captain Stevens," he said clearly, "I am a diamond status member on your airline. I booked and paid for seat 1A. Your system assigned me this seat. I have broken no rules or regulations. I am sitting calmly in my assigned seat. Any issue here is not of my creation." Several passengers murmured in agreement. A young woman across the aisle gave him a subtle thumbs up. But the captain had made his decision. "Since you refuse to comply with crew instructions, I'm classifying you as a disruptive passenger," Stevens announced. He turned to Karen. "Call airport security." "What?" Jamal was genuinely shocked. "How am I being disruptive by sitting in my assigned seat?" "By refusing to comply with crew instructions," Stevens replied mechanically. "Instruction to give up my rightful seat to another passenger who wants it? Is that in your airline policy?" The captain ignored the question. Karen was already on the phone to security. Another flight attendant made an announcement, "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We're dealing with a situation that requires security assistance." Maxwell Whitfield smirked from his seat, making no attempt to defuse the situation he had created. Other passengers looked uncomfortable, several were still recording. Within minutes, 3 airport security officers boarded the plane. They approached Jamal's seat as the flight attendant stepped back. "Sir, we need you to gather your belongings and come with us," the lead officer stated. "On what grounds?" Jamal asked, his legal mind engaging. "I've broken no laws. I'm sitting in my assigned seat. The captain has declared you uncooperative, which gives us authority to remove you under federal aviation regulations." "I'd like to see that specific regulation," Jamal countered. "Being uncooperative about giving up a seat I paid for to another passenger is not a security threat." The security officers exchanged glances. One whispered to another, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Sir, please don't make this more difficult," the lead officer said. "We have to follow the captain's request." "I understand you have a job to do," Jamal replied, "but I'm being removed because of racial bias, not any legitimate security concern." At those words, Captain Stevens stepped forward. "That's a serious allegation and completely untrue. This is about aircraft management, not race." "Then why?" Jamal asked loudly enough for everyone to hear, am I the only person being asked to give up my assigned seat? Why not ask any of the other first-class passengers? Why me specifically? The question hung in the air. No one had an answer. Sir, we need you to come with us now, the security officer insisted. Jamal looked around at the watching passengers, the recording phones, the impassive faces of the crew, and Maxwell Whitfield's satisfied expression. He had made his point. Now it was time to leave with dignity. I'll file a formal complaint and pursue legal action, he stated clearly as he gathered his briefcase. This is discriminatory treatment. He stood to leave, but as he turned to exit the row, one of the security officers grabbed his arm roughly, as if expecting resistance. There's no need for physical contact, Jamal objected. I'm complying. The officer tightened his grip, unnecessarily shoving Jamal forward. Jamal stumbled against the seat in front, and as he tried to regain his balance, another officer grabbed him from behind. In the confusion, Jamal's face struck the overhead compartment, splitting his lip. Blood dripped onto his white shirt as the officers forcibly dragged him down the aisle. Passengers gasped at the unnecessary force. Jamal offered no resistance, yet the officers handled him like a dangerous criminal. As they marched him through the terminal, blood still flowing from his lip, travelers stopped to stare and record the spectacle of a well-dressed black man in handcuffs being escorted by security, his face bloodied. Inside a small detention room at O'Hare, an officer finally offered him a tissue for his bleeding lip. This will be on the news by morning, Jamal said quietly. And in court by next week. The officer looked away, unable to meet his eyes. Alone in the sterile airport detention room, Jamal pressed a tissue to his split lip, watching as crimson bloomed through the white paper. His $5,000 suit was rumpled and stained with his own blood. His wrists bore red marks from the unnecessarily tight handcuffs. But the physical discomfort paled compared to the humiliation he had endured in front of a planeful of strangers. As security officers processed his incident report, Jamal's phone buzzed repeatedly in his pocket. They'd confiscated his briefcase but overlooked his phone. Discreetly, he checked the notifications. 27 missed calls. Hundreds of text messages. Thousands of social media alerts. The videos were already spreading. 3 different passengers had recorded his removal from multiple angles. The clearest footage, captured by a college student in business class, had been uploaded to social media with the caption, "Black executive forcibly removed from first-class seat so white man could have it. Wingspan Airlines, this is racism." Within an hour, the video had been viewed 2 million times. Within 2, it was on every major news network. Jamal's assistant, Zora Williams, had been trying desperately to reach him. When he finally returned her call, her voice was tight with controlled fury. "Jamal, are you okay? Your face, they hurt you." "I'll be fine," he assured her, though his lip throbbed painfully. "What's the status of the investor meeting?" "Postponed," she replied. They saw what happened. The head of NetSecure called personally to express his outrage and reschedule. But that's not the priority right now. You're trending nationwide. #CEOInSeat1A is the top hashtag. People are calling for boycotts of Wingspan. Jamal closed his eyes briefly. "This was never about a seat, Zora." "I know," she said softly. "What do you need from me?" "Contact Darius Jackson. Tell him I need his legal team ready for a major civil rights case. And call Thomas Bailey. I need information on Wingspan's internal policies." "Already done," she replied efficiently. "Darius is on his way to O'Hare now. Thomas called me first, actually. He says there's something you need to know about Wingspan." "What?" "He wouldn't tell me over the phone. Said it's too sensitive. But he's reaching out to contacts inside the airline." By the time airport security finally released him with a warning for interfering with flight operations, a charge that would never hold up in court, Jamal emerged into a media frenzy. Reporters had gathered in the terminal, alerted to his location by anonymous tips from airport employees sympathetic to his situation. Jamal knew better than to comment unprepared. Keeping his head down, he moved quickly through the crowd toward the black Suburban where his attorney, Darius Jackson, waited. "Don't say a word until we're clear," Darius instructed as he hurried Jamal into the vehicle. Once inside, he examined Jamal's injured lip. "We'll document that. Excessive force. They're going to regret putting hands on you." Darius, a former civil rights prosecutor turned high-powered attorney, specialized in cases of corporate discrimination. He and Jamal had met at a Black Business Alliance event years earlier, and Darius had handled CyberShield's legal affairs ever since. "Wingspan released a statement while you were detained," Darius informed him, passing over his tablet. "You're not going to like it." The airline's press release was clinical. Wingspan Airlines confirms that a passenger was removed from flight WS-1422 for failing to comply with crew instructions. "Safety is our top priority, and federal regulations require all passengers to follow crew directives. We are investigating the incident fully." "No mention that I was in my assigned seat," Jamal noted. "No mention that I was asked to move for another passenger's preference." "They're trying to frame this as a security issue," Darius agreed. "Standard playbook. But they didn't count on multiple passengers recording everything." As the Suburban navigated through Chicago traffic toward Jamal's downtown penthouse, his phone rang again. Thomas Bailey. "Jamal, this is worse than I thought," Thomas began without preamble. "I've got a contact in Wingspan's IT department. They sent me something you need to see, an internal memo about passenger comfort profiles. It's a system for tracking which passengers don't want to sit next to, certain demographics." "Are you saying they have an actual policy for this?" Jamal asked incredulously. "Not an official public policy, but yes, an internal system. Maxwell Whitfield is flagged as profile sensitive in their database. That's code for white passengers who've complained about sitting next to black or brown passengers." Jamal fell silent, absorbing this revelation. It wasn't just one racist captain or flight attendant. It was systematic. "There's more," Thomas continued. "Whitfield isn't just a frequent flyer. He's a minor shareholder in Wingspan's parent company and golfing buddies with their CEO." By evening, Jamal's penthouse had transformed into a command center. Darius and his legal team occupied the dining room. Zora managed the communications response from the living room. Social media experts tracked the public reaction in real time from the guest room. The story had exploded beyond anyone's expectations. #CEOinSeat1A had generated over 12 million posts. Celebrities and politicians were weighing in. Civil rights organizations were calling for investigations. Wingspan stock had dropped 14% in a single day. Late that night, Wingspan CEO Victoria Pierce finally issued a personal statement: "We deeply regret the unfortunate incident aboard flight WS-1422. We are conducting a thorough investigation and have placed the involved crew members on administrative leave pending the outcome. Wingspan Airlines does not tolerate discrimination of any kind." But it was too little, too late. The damage was done. As Jamal stood before his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the Chicago skyline, he made a decision that would alter the trajectory of his life. This wasn't just about one humiliating incident or one airline's discriminatory practices. This was about challenging an entire system that allowed such treatment to persist. What do you think about this situation? Comment number 1 if you believe Jamal was right to stand his ground, or number 2 if you think he should have switched seats to avoid confrontation. Like and subscribe if you've ever witnessed discrimination and want to see stories of people fighting back. How far would you go to stand up against injustice? What would you have done in Jamal's position? Stay tuned as we explore how one man's refusal to give up his seat sparked a movement that would transform an entire industry. At Wingspan Airlines headquarters in Dallas, emergency lights burned through the night. Inside the executive conference room, CEO Victoria Pierce faced her senior leadership team, her normally composed demeanor cracking under pressure. "How the hell did this happen?" she demanded, slapping a tablet displaying the latest stock price onto the table. "We've lost hundreds of millions in market value in 24 hours. The head of public relations, Alan Morris, cleared his throat. "The videos are problematic. Multiple angles show Dr. Washington calmly stating he's in his assigned seat while being forcibly removed. The optics are devastating." "Then change the optics," Victoria snapped. "Release the passenger manifests. Show he was disruptive before filming started." The airline's general counsel, Patricia Winters, interjected. "We can't do that, Victoria. The manifest confirms he was assigned seat 1A. And our own flight crews report doesn't mention any disruption prior to his refusal to change seats. Fabricating evidence would expose us to significant legal liability." Victoria paced the room. "What about Whitfield? Can't he issue a statement supporting our crew's actions?" "Maxwell Whitfield has gone dark," the PR director replied. "His company has distanced itself from his behavior. The video clearly shows him demanding another passenger seat, then smirking as that passenger is removed." The room fell silent as Victoria absorbed this information. Finally, the chief operations officer spoke up. "There's another problem," he said hesitantly. "Someone leaked information about our passenger comfort profiles to the media." Victoria froze. "What information?" "The internal classification system. The codes we use for passengers who've requested not to be seated near certain demographics. That system is proprietary," Victoria insisted. "It's just a customer preference tool." "Ma'am," the COO replied carefully, "multiple employees have now confirmed to reporters that they were instructed to reseat passengers based on racial and religious profiles. They're calling it systematic discrimination, and they have documentation." The general counsel closed her eyes briefly. "We need to prepare for significant legal exposure. Class action potential." Victoria's phone buzzed with a message from the board chairman, "Emergency board meeting. 8 a.m. tomorrow. Bring full incident report and containment plan." As the Wingspan leadership team scrambled to contain the crisis, across town in a luxury hotel suite, Jamal Washington was building his case. His legal team had expanded to include civil rights attorneys, aviation law specialists, and public relations experts. The conference table was covered with documents, including a growing stack of emails from former Wingspan passengers sharing similar experiences. "We've identified 28 verifiable incidents in the past year alone," Darius reported. Black and brown passengers asked to move from first or business class to accommodate white passengers, always with vague references to passenger comfort or system errors. Jamal nodded, his split lip now properly treated but still visibly swollen. "And the internal documents Thomas provided?" "Damning," confirmed Darius. "The passenger comfort profile system explicitly tracks which white passengers have complained about sitting near minorities and ensures they're accommodated in future bookings." Thomas Bailey entered the suite, looking grim. "They're going to offer you money," he announced without preamble. "A lot of money. The board is meeting right now, and containment is their priority. They'll want an NDA and a quick settlement." "I don't want their money," Jamal replied. "I want accountability." "They'll start at $5 million, Thomas predicted. "They might go as high as 20. Darius whistled. "That would be a record settlement for this type of case." "It doesn't matter," Jamal insisted. "This isn't about compensation. It's about exposing a system that treats people like second-class citizens based on the color of their skin." Even as they strategized, Jamal's phone buzzed with an urgent message from Zora. "Major problem. Our investors are getting nervous. NetSecure is reconsidering the partnership. They're concerned about controversy affecting the deal." Jamal's jaw tightened. The European expansion that had been within reach just days ago was now in jeopardy. CyberShield stood to lose millions in potential revenue. Arrange a video conference with NetSecure, he instructed Zora. I'll address their concerns directly. While his legal team continued building the case, Jamal connected with the NetSecure executives from the hotel suite. The Dutch executives appeared uncomfortable as the video conference began. Dr. Washington, began NetSecure CEO Dieter van Hoven, we have great respect for your company's technology. However, our shareholders are concerned about the public controversy surrounding your incident. You mean my racial profiling and assault by airline staff? Jamal replied directly. Van Hoven shifted uncomfortably. We're not taking a position on the nature of the incident. We simply prefer to avoid partnerships that might involve public relations challenges. I understand, Jamal said, his voice steady. But I'd ask you to consider something. CyberShield has developed the most advanced security protocols in the industry because I understand what it means to be vulnerable. I know what happens when systems designed to protect people are corrupted to target them instead. He leaned closer to the camera. The same commitment to justice and fairness that compels me to challenge discriminatory treatment also drives how I build security systems that protect everyone equally. If your company values innovation and integrity, you won't find a better partner than CyberShield. The NetSecure executives exchanged glances. Van Hoven nodded slowly. We'll continue our due diligence and reach a decision by next week. As the video call ended, Jamal received word that Wingspan Airlines had requested a private meeting. Their legal team wants to discuss resolution options, Darius explained. Just as Thomas predicted. The meeting was scheduled for that afternoon in a neutral location, a private conference room at a downtown law firm. Jamal arrived with Darius and 2 additional attorneys. Wingspan sent their general counsel, Patricia Winters, accompanied by a team of 4 lawyers. Dr. Washington, Patricia began after introductions. Wingspan Airlines deeply regrets the unfortunate incident aboard flight WS-1422. We would like to offer compensation for your inconvenience and any misunderstanding that occurred. Misunderstanding? Jamal repeated. I was forcibly removed from my assigned seat, physically assaulted by security personnel, and publicly humiliated. All because a white passenger wanted my seat and your crew accommodated his racist preference. Where's the misunderstanding? Patricia maintained her professional demeanor. We're prepared to offer substantial compensation without any admission of liability. $7 million in exchange for a standard confidentiality agreement and release of all claims. Darius leaned forward. Ms. Winters, my client was publicly degraded. His reputation was damaged. He sustained physical injuries. And we have evidence suggesting your airline maintains policies that systematically discriminate against passengers of color. $7 million doesn't begin to address this situation. $10 million, Patricia countered without hesitation. Our final offer. Jamal studied her face. You want my silence more than you want to fix the problem. We're implementing comprehensive sensitivity training for all staff, she assured him. The crew members involved have been terminated. We're reviewing our seating policies. But not dismantling the passenger comfort profile system, Jamal interrupted. Not admitting it exists. Not making structural changes to ensure this never happens to anyone else. Patricia fell silent. I'm not interested in your money, Jamal stated firmly. I want public accountability. I want the full passenger comfort profile database released. I want an independent audit of all your seating policies and practices. And I want structural changes implemented with oversight from civil rights organizations. The Wingspan legal team exchanged alarmed glances. Those terms are completely unacceptable, Patricia replied. The information you're requesting is proprietary. Release would violate our passengers' privacy and our business interests. Then we'll see you in court, Jamal concluded, standing to leave. Where discovery will compel the release of that information anyway. As they departed, Darius whispered, they'll come back with a better offer. It doesn't matter, Jamal replied. Some things aren't for sale. Back at CyberShield headquarters, Jamal found his employees had organized an impromptu demonstration of support. Hundreds of staff members greeted him with applause as he entered the building. Many wore T-shirts hastily printed with the slogan, Seat 1A, standing ground against discrimination. Jamal was deeply moved by their solidarity, but concerned about the company's operations. Has this situation affected our clients? He asked his executive team during an emergency meeting. Some are concerned, his COO admitted. 2 government contracts are on hold pending review. But we've also had an unexpected development. Several major corporations have reached out specifically requesting proposals because of your stand against discrimination. They want to work with a company that shares their values. The corporate battlefield was shifting. What had begun as a personal humiliation was evolving into something much larger, a very public referendum on how corporations handled issues of race and equality. And the public was watching closely. Late that night, as Jamal reviewed legal documents in his office, Thomas Bailey called with a breakthrough. One of Karen Hoffman's colleagues reached out to me, he said excitedly. Karen wants to talk. She says she has information about systematic discrimination at Wingspan that goes beyond the passenger comfort profiles. And she's willing to go on record. Why would she help us? Jamal asked cautiously. She was part of the crew that had me removed. Apparently, she's been documenting questionable practices for years, waiting for the right moment to come forward. Your case broke the dam. She's not the only one, Jamal. Wingspan employees are starting to speak up. The battle lines were being drawn. On one side stood Wingspan Airlines, a corporate giant with deep pockets and powerful connections. On the other stood Jamal Washington, armed with the truth and growing public support. It would not be a quick or easy fight, but it was one Jamal was prepared to wage, not just for himself, but for every person who had ever been deemed less worthy of dignity and respect because of the color of their skin. 3 days after the incident, Jamal Washington sat across from Benjamin Turner, one of the nation's most respected civil rights attorneys. Turner's office walls displayed framed newspaper headlines from landmark discrimination cases he had won over his 40-year career. At 72, he had planned to retire the following year, but Jamal's case had drawn him back into the fight. This isn't just about one man in one seat, Turner said, his voice carrying the gravitas of decades fighting systemic racism. This is about dismantling institutionalized discrimination disguised as customer service. Beside him sat Deshaun Morris, a former Wingspan flight attendant who had been fired 2 years earlier after objecting to the airline's seating practices. Deshaun had reached out after seeing Jamal's story. They called it passenger comfort management, Deshaun explained. We were trained to identify VIP passengers who had specific seating preferences. It was all coded language. If a white VIP passenger looked uncomfortable near a person of color, especially in premium cabins, we were expected to resolve the situation by moving the minority passenger. And if you refused? Jamal asked. First came warnings for poor customer service. Then reduced hours. Finally termination for not meeting company standards. I filed a wrongful termination suit, but they buried me in legal procedures until I ran out of money to fight. Benjamin Turner nodded grimly. Classic corporate tactic. They count on individuals lacking the resources to challenge them effectively. Resources won't be an issue this time, Jamal assured them. Over the weekend, he had committed $10 million of his personal wealth to establish Sky Justice, a coalition dedicated to combating discrimination in the airline industry. The strategy session lasted well into the night. They were building more than a lawsuit, they were creating a movement. Data analysts from CyberShield were assigned to examine thousands of seating records leaked by Wingspan employees, identifying patterns of passenger reassignment. A media team developed messaging that kept the focus on systemic issues rather than individual actors. Legal experts drafted comprehensive policy changes that would become their non-negotiable demands. Meanwhile, Wingspan Airlines was executing its own counteroffensive. Their PR firm launched a subtle campaign questioning Jamal's character, planting stories about past business disputes and suggesting he had orchestrated the confrontation for publicity. They emphasized Captain Stevens' distinguished 30-year career and Karen Hoffman's exemplary service record, portraying them as dedicated professionals who had followed security protocols. Victoria Pierce, Wingspan CEO, appeared on a business news program, carefully reframing the narrative. While we regret how the situation unfolded, Wingspan Airlines has zero tolerance for any behavior that compromises flight safety. Our crew members make difficult decisions daily to ensure the well-being of all passengers. When the interviewer pressed about the passenger comfort profiles, Pierce deflected, like all airlines, we use sophisticated customer preference algorithms to enhance the travel experience. Any suggestion that these systems target specific demographics is categorically false. But the corporate damage control was faltering against the steady release of damning evidence. Karen Hoffman, still technically employed by Wingspan but now cooperating with Jamal's team, had provided internal training materials that explicitly instructed staff on how to handle seating incompatibility issues with minimal visibility. Thomas Bailey leveraged his aviation industry connections to obtain statistical data showing that across all major airlines, black first-class passengers were reassigned seats at 14 times the rate of white passengers. For Wingspan specifically, the rate was 23 times higher. As public pressure mounted, Wingspan made their first major tactical error. An internal memo from Victoria Pierce to senior staff was leaked. The Washington situation requires decisive containment. Identify and terminate all employees suspected of leaking information. Preserve all documentation of our passenger management systems for potential legal destruction holds. The memo's release prompted an immediate SEC investigation into potential evidence tampering and escalated what might have remained a discrimination case into a corporate governance scandal. Jamal's media strategy deliberately contrasted with Wingspan's defensive crouch. Rather than attacking individual employees, he consistently emphasized structural change. In his first major interview since the incident, he spoke compassionately about the pressures faced by flight crews. The flight attendants and even Captain Stevens were operating within a system designed to prioritize the comfort of certain passengers over the dignity of others, he explained. This isn't about punishing individuals, it's about changing the system that puts them in impossible positions and incentivizes discriminatory actions. This approach resonated deeply with the public and, importantly, with Wingspan employees themselves. More whistleblowers came forward, including ground staff, booking agents, and even IT personnel who had helped design the passenger profile database. A week into the battle, Benjamin Turner filed a groundbreaking class action lawsuit. Rather than simply seeking damages, the suit demanded structural remedies. Independent oversight of seating algorithms, mandatory reporting of all passenger reassignments by demographic data, and regular civil rights audits of airline practices. The legal filing coincided with the launch of Flight Watch, a CyberShield-developed app that allowed passengers to anonymously report and track incidents of discrimination across all airlines. Within days, the app had been downloaded over 2 million times, creating a crowdsourced database of discriminatory patterns that no individual lawsuit could have assembled. Behind the scenes, Maxwell Whitfield was facing his own reckoning. Identified in multiple videos as the passenger who had demanded Jamal's seat, he had become the public face of entitled privilege. His company, a mid-sized financial consulting firm, was losing clients rapidly as the hashtag #Don'tBeAMaxwell trended on business networks. After days of silence, Whitfield attempted damage control through a hastily arranged interview. "I never intended for the situation to escalate," he claimed. "I simply needed a window seat for my anxiety condition, and as a longtime customer, I expected accommodation." When the interviewer pointed out that he could have accepted his assigned seat or requested a different window seat, Whitfield grew defensive. "You're making this about race when it was about customer loyalty." Washington was confrontational and uncooperative with the crew. The interview backfired spectacularly when 3 passengers from the flight immediately posted their videos online, clearly showing Jamal's calm demeanor throughout the confrontation. Whitfield's company announced his voluntary leave of absence the following morning. As the legal and public relations battle intensified, Jamal faced personal challenges as well. Death threats began arriving at his office and home. His security team intercepted a suspicious package addressed to him at CyberShield headquarters. His teenage daughter, Aisha, had to be pulled from school after classmates showed her social media posts threatening her father. Maybe we should consider the settlement, Zora suggested during a particularly difficult day, after Jamal had spent an hour on the phone reassuring his frightened daughter. $20 million would fund a foundation that could fight this battle more safely. Jamal shook his head. Taking the money means taking the NDA. It means the system continues behind closed doors. How do I explain that to Aisha? That I had a chance to change things but chose the easy path instead. That evening, as Jamal worked late in his office, reviewing depositions from former Wingspan employees, his secure line rang. The caller was Congresswoman Lisa Montgomery, chair of the House Transportation Committee. Dr. Washington, she began formally, my committee has been monitoring your situation with great interest. The evidence you've gathered suggests this issue extends well beyond one airline or incident. Yes, Congresswoman. We've documented similar patterns across the industry. Then perhaps it's time to address this at the federal regulatory level, she suggested. My committee is planning hearings on discrimination in commercial aviation. Would you be willing to testify? Jamal sat up straighter. I would be honored, Congresswoman. Fair warning, the industry lobbying against this will be intense. They'll try to destroy your credibility. Are you prepared for that? Jamal thought of his father, who had lost everything fighting a system rigged against him. He thought of Aisha, who deserved to live in a world where her worth wasn't determined by the color of her skin. He thought of every person who had ever swallowed their dignity rather than challenge injustice because the cost seemed too high. Congresswoman, they can try to destroy my reputation, he replied with quiet determination. But they can't destroy the truth. And the truth is, no American should be treated as less deserving of dignity and respect because of race. Not on an airplane, not anywhere. The hearings begin next Thursday, she informed him. My office will send the formal invitation tomorrow. And Dr. Washington? Thank you for your courage. It's long past time for this conversation. As he hung up, Jamal realized the battle had just expanded dramatically. What had begun as a personal humiliation was now moving to the national stage, with potential to create lasting legislative change. The stakes couldn't be higher, but neither could the opportunity to transform an industry. The Rayburn House office building hummed with anticipation. Room 2167, the largest hearing room in the House of Representatives, was filled to capacity. News cameras lined the back wall. Congressional staffers whispered into their bosses' ears, providing last-minute briefings. Civil rights leaders sat shoulder to shoulder with airline industry executives in an uneasy proximity rarely seen in Washington. At the witness table, Jamal Washington adjusted his tie, reviewing his prepared testimony one final time. Beside him sat Benjamin Turner, whose decades of civil rights litigation had prepared him for this moment. On Jamal's other side was Dr. Angela Carter, a respected psychologist specializing in the psychological impacts of public discrimination. Facing them from the elevated dais were the 23 members of the House Transportation Committee, led by Chairwoman Lisa Montgomery. The committee's jurisdiction over aviation regulations gave their findings significant weight with federal agencies. Today's hearing, Discrimination in Commercial Aviation, Examining Industry Practices, had been convened with unusual speed, reflecting the national attention on Jamal's case. The committee will come to order, Chairwoman Montgomery announced, striking her gavel. Today we examine troubling allegations of discriminatory practices in the commercial airline industry. These hearings are not about one incident or one airline, but rather a pattern of policies and practices that may violate federal civil rights protections. From the executive row, Victoria Pierce, Wingspan CEO, shifted uncomfortably. Beside her sat the CEOs of 4 other major airlines, all summoned to witness the proceedings. They had declined invitations to testify, sending their diversity officers instead, a decision the chairwoman had publicly criticized as lacking accountability. Our first witness is Dr. Jamal Washington, Montgomery continued. Dr. Washington is the founder and CEO of CyberShield, one of the nation's leading cybersecurity firms. He is here today to share his personal experience and the subsequent investigation his team has conducted into airline seating practices. Jamal leaned toward the microphone. Thank you, Chairwoman Montgomery and distinguished committee members, for this opportunity to address serious concerns about discriminatory practices in commercial aviation. His testimony was measured and methodical, devoid of the emotional language that might undermine his credibility. He detailed the events of Flight WS-1422 chronologically, referenced the video evidence that corroborated his account, and carefully avoided characterizing the motivations of individual crew members. The incident I experienced was not isolated, he continued. Through the FlightWatch reporting system, we've documented over 3,000 similar incidents across all major carriers in just 2 weeks. Black passengers are 22 times more likely to be asked to change assigned seats in premium cabins than white passengers. Middle Eastern passengers face even higher rates of displacement. He presented the committee with data analyses, internal airline documents, and testimony from former airline employees. Most damning was his explanation of the passenger comfort profile systems. These systems use coded language to track which passengers object to sitting near minorities. Terms like seating preference sensitive, cabin harmony concerns, and special accommodation needs serve as proxies for racial segregation preferences, Jamal explained. When these VIP passengers board, flight attendants are instructed to reseat minority passengers to enhance customer comfort. Several committee members appeared visibly disturbed by these revelations. Congresswoman Janet Alvarez leaned forward. Dr. Washington, are you suggesting that major American airlines maintain formalized systems for racial segregation in 2025? The systems are designed with plausible deniability, Jamal clarified. They don't explicitly mention race. They reference passenger comfort and customer experience optimization. But the data reveals their actual function, to ensure certain white passengers don't have to sit next to people of color, particularly in premium cabins. Following Jamal's testimony, Dr. Angela Carter explained the psychological impact of such public discrimination. Being singled out and removed from a space you have every right to occupy sends a powerful message about one's perceived worth in society, she testified. The trauma is compounded when it occurs in a public setting with an audience, creating what psychologists call witness diminishment. The experience of having one's humanity reduced while others watch. As the morning session continued, airline representatives attempted to frame the incidents as isolated customer service failures rather than systemic issues. Patricia Winters, now serving as Wingspan's chief diversity officer, testified that the airline had no policy that considers race in seating assignments and was committed to providing equal service to all passengers. The afternoon brought unexpected testimony. Karen Hoffman, still technically employed by Wingspan but now openly cooperating with investigators, took the witness stand. Her hands trembled slightly as she was sworn in. I've been a flight attendant for 27 years, she began. For most of that time, I believed I was providing excellent customer service. 3 years ago, I was promoted to first-class cabin service on international routes, a coveted position. During training, we were introduced to the premium cabin harmony protocols. She described how flight attendants were trained to identify priority customers with special seating needs and ensure their maximum comfort. It was never explicitly about race, Karen admitted. But the examples in our training all involved moving passengers of color to accommodate white passengers with seating sensitivity. We were told these passengers represented significant revenue and keeping them happy was essential to the airline's business model. A Republican committee member interjected, Ms. Hoffman, isn't this simply about customer loyalty? Accommodating frequent flyers who spend hundreds of thousands with your airline? Sir, I believe that too, Karen replied. Until I analyzed the data myself. Black Diamond level members, our highest tier of frequent flyers, were asked to move to accommodate white Gold level members regularly. It wasn't about loyalty or spending. It was about who the airline valued more. The most dramatic moment came when Congressman Robert Chin displayed an internal Wingspan email on the hearing room screens. The email, from Captain Brad Stevens to Flight Operations Management, complained about being put in an impossible position by the passenger harmony protocols. When these situations escalate, pilots bear the ultimate responsibility, Stevens had written 6 months before Jamal's incident. We're expected to enforce policies that have clear discriminatory impacts without any official acknowledgement that's what we're doing. This creates untenable legal and ethical exposure for cockpit crew. Victoria Pierce visibly paled as the email was displayed. This evidence directly contradicted Wingspan's claim that they had no policies influencing seating based on race. The final witness of the day was Deshaun Morris, the flight attendant who had been fired after objecting to Wingspan's practices. I was terminated after refusing to ask a black family to move from first class to accommodate a white passenger who always sits in row 2, Deshaun testified. When I explained to my supervisor that this was discriminatory, I was told, "This isn't about discrimination, it's about a 20-year customer who spends 6 figures annually with us." Deshaun produced performance reviews showing his ratings dropped precipitously after this incident, despite previously exemplary evaluations. They didn't fire me for standing up against discrimination. They fired me for poor team integration and failure to prioritize customer experience. But everyone knew the real reason. As the hearing concluded, Chairwoman Montgomery addressed the packed room. The testimony and evidence presented today suggests a troubling pattern of practices across the airline industry that may violate federal civil rights protections. This committee will continue its investigation and consider legislative remedies to ensure equal treatment for all air travelers. Outside the hearing room, reporters swarmed Jamal. "Dr. Washington, what outcome are you hoping for from these hearings?" "This isn't about punishing one airline or seeking personal vindication," Jamal replied. "It's about creating accountability and transparency in an industry that affects millions of Americans daily. Every passenger deserves equal dignity and respect, regardless of race." Today was an important step toward making that a reality. As cameras flashed and microphones thrust toward him, Jamal noticed a familiar figure standing at the periphery of the media scrum, Maxwell Whitfield. Their eyes met briefly. Whitfield, who had declined an invitation to testify, quickly turned away and disappeared into the crowd. Later that evening, in a private dining room at a Washington restaurant, Jamal met with Chairwoman Montgomery and Benjamin Turner to discuss next steps. The hearing had generated even more attention than anticipated, with live coverage on all major networks and trending status on every social platform. "The airlines are running scared," Montgomery informed them. "My office has received calls from 3 major carrier CEOs already, suddenly eager to discuss voluntary industry reforms before we consider legislation. They're hoping for minor cosmetic changes," Benjamin cautioned. "We need structural reform with enforcement mechanisms." "Agreed," said the chairwoman. "Which is why I've scheduled a follow-up hearing focused specifically on proposed remedies. Dr. Washington, will you work with my staff to develop recommendations?" "Absolutely," Jamal replied. "We've already drafted a comprehensive framework based on our research." As their meeting concluded, Jamal received an urgent call from Thomas Bailey. "You need to see the news," Thomas said without preamble. "Wingspan's board just called an emergency session. Something big is happening." Jamal switched on the restaurant's television just in time to catch the breaking news banner: Wingspan Airlines CEO Victoria Pierce resigns amid discrimination scandal. The battle was far from over, but a significant victory had been won. As Jamal watched the news coverage, he realized the struggle had evolved far beyond his personal experience. It had become a nationwide reckoning with discrimination that had been hidden in plain sight for decades. And for perhaps the first time, real change seemed possible. The Wingspan Airlines boardroom, normally a sanctuary of corporate decorum, erupted in chaos. 24 hours after Victoria Pierce's resignation, the emergency board meeting had devolved into factions hurling accusations across the polished mahogany table. "Pierce is a scapegoat," shouted Harold Jennings, a board member and major shareholder. "These policies existed long before her tenure. We all approved the customer experience optimization programs knowing exactly what they were designed to do." "Speak for yourself, Harold," countered Diane Williams, one of only 2 black board members. "Some of us were kept deliberately ignorant about the true nature of these systems. The passenger comfort profiles were presented as accommodations for disabilities and health conditions, not tools for segregation." The chairman, Robert Blackwell, struggled to maintain order. "Regardless of who knew what, we have a company in free fall. Our stock has dropped 34%. We're facing multiple class action lawsuits. The Department of Transportation is threatening to review our operating licenses. We need solutions, not finger-pointing." The chief financial officer delivered more bad news. "Advance bookings are down 62%. Corporate accounts are suspending their contracts. The #Boycott Wingspan campaign has over 40 million participants. At current burn rates, we have 4 months of operating capital remaining." A hush fell over the room as the existential threat became clear. Wingspan Airlines, with its 90-year history and 40,000 employees, faced potential bankruptcy. "We need new leadership immediately," the chairman declared. "Someone with impeccable ethics who can rebuild trust with the public and our employees." "I have a suggestion," offered Diane Williams. "Thomas Bailey." The board members exchanged glances. Bailey was widely respected in the aviation industry for his operational expertise and progressive leadership. As CEO of a regional carrier that consistently ranked highest in customer satisfaction, he had demonstrated that ethical practices and profitability could coexist. "Bailey is also African American," Diane continued. "His appointment would signal genuine commitment to change, not just crisis management." "He's also friends with Jamal Washington," another board member pointed out. "Would he even consider working with us? That relationship might be exactly what we need," the chairman mused. "Someone who can open a dialogue rather than continue this war." While Wingspan's board deliberated, across the country, a different kind of revolution was unfolding. Flight attendants at 3 major airlines, including Wingspan, had organized a work action protesting discriminatory seating policies. Wearing black armbands reading, "Dignity for all passengers," they reported to work but refused to implement any seating changes not related to safety or disability accommodations. "We became flight attendants to ensure passenger comfort and safety, not to enforce prejudice," explained Union Representative Maria Gonzalez at an impromptu press conference at Chicago O'Hare. "Many of us were placed in impossible positions, forced to choose between our employment and our moral compass. Today, we choose dignity, for ourselves and our passengers." The flight attendants' action garnered immediate public support, with the #FlyingWithDignity trending nationwide. Passengers began posting supportive messages and documentation of their own experiences, creating a groundswell of first-hand accounts that airlines could no longer dismiss as isolated incidents. Meanwhile, at CyberShield headquarters, Jamal had assembled an unprecedented coalition. Civil rights organizations, airline employee unions, travel industry representatives, and technology experts were collaborating on a comprehensive framework for industry reform. The project, named Fair Skies Initiative, aimed to create transparent standards for equitable treatment in air travel. "The technology that enabled discrimination can be repurposed to ensure equality," Jamal explained to the assembled group. "CyberShield will donate our expertise to develop systems that track and prevent discriminatory patterns in real time." The coalition's work quickly expanded beyond seating issues to address broader patterns of discrimination in aviation, disproportionate security screening, inconsistent enforcement of baggage policies, and disparities in compensation for travel disruptions. 2 weeks after the congressional hearings, Thomas Bailey called Jamal with surprising news. "Wingspan's board wants to meet with us. They're offering to make you the centerpiece of their reforms." What exactly does that mean? Jamal asked skeptically. They want to implement the Fair Skies framework as company policy, with independent oversight. And they want to establish a Washington standard for passenger treatment that would become industry baseline. Why would I trust them after everything that's happened? Jamal questioned. This could be an elaborate PR stunt. Because they've also asked me to consider becoming their CEO, Thomas revealed. And I've told them I'll only consider it if they commit to complete transparency and structural change, not just window dressing. Jamal was silent for a moment, contemplating the implications. You'd leave your current position to take over a company in crisis? Sometimes the greatest opportunity for change comes from the deepest crisis, Thomas replied. This could transform the industry from the inside. But I won't do it without your support. After careful consideration and consultation with his legal team, Jamal agreed to preliminary discussions with Wingspan's board. The meeting was arranged at Neutral Territory, a conference center in Washington, D.C. with civil rights attorneys present to ensure transparency. The chairman began with an unequivocal apology. Dr. Washington, what happened to you was inexcusable. It reflected policies and practices that violated our stated values and, more importantly, basic human dignity. On behalf of Wingspan Airlines, I offer our sincere apology. Apologies are a start, Jamal replied, but meaningful change requires more than words. We agree, the chairman continued. Which is why we're proposing a comprehensive overhaul of our entire approach to passenger service. The board presented their proposal, implementing the Fair Skies framework with independent auditing, establishing a passenger bill of rights with clear enforcement mechanisms, creating a diversity oversight committee with real authority, and developing new training programs for all customer-facing staff. Additionally, the chairman added, we want to create the Washington Protocol for handling seating disputes. A transparent, equitable process that explicitly prohibits consideration of race, religion, or ethnicity in any seating decision. Jamal studied their proposal carefully. It contained everything his coalition had demanded, and more. This represents significant change, he acknowledged. But implementation is where most corporate diversity initiatives fail. How can we ensure these policies translate to real passenger experiences? That's why we want Thomas Bailey as CEO, the chairman explained. Someone with the moral authority and operational expertise to drive genuine transformation. And we're prepared to offer you a position as well, heading an independent ethics oversight board with authority to review and public report on our compliance. The offer was unexpected. Jamal had never considered working with Wingspan, the company that had humiliated him and exposed the ugly reality of corporate discrimination. Yet the opportunity to guide internal reform was compelling. I need time to consider this, Jamal replied. And I'd need complete independence and authority. Of course, the chairman agreed. We understand this is an unusual proposition. As Jamal left the meeting, he found himself torn. Could he trust Wingspan's apparent commitment to change? Or was this an elaborate attempt to neutralize him as an adversary? The answer came from an unexpected source. That evening, he received a secure message from Karen Hoffman, the flight attendant who had testified at the congressional hearing. Dr. Washington, I've heard about Wingspan's offer. The flight crews are cautiously hopeful. For the first time, management is actually listening to our concerns about discriminatory practices. Many of us believe this could be a genuine turning point, but only if someone like you holds them accountable from the inside. Please consider it. Similar messages arrived from other Wingspan employees, including ground staff and booking agents who had witnessed discrimination but felt powerless to challenge it. Their collective voice persuaded Jamal that this opportunity for structural change shouldn't be squandered. After consulting with Benjamin Turner and his closest advisors, Jamal made his decision. He would accept the position on the Ethics Oversight Board, but with non-negotiable conditions: full access to all company data, complete independence from management, and the authority to issue public reports without prior approval. To everyone's surprise, Wingspan's board accepted these terms without hesitation. The announcement of Thomas Bailey as CEO and the formation of the independent ethics board headed by Jamal Washington made front-page news nationwide. Industry analysts called it the most significant restructuring in aviation history prompted by civil rights concerns. Maxwell Whitfield watched these developments with mounting dread. His company had lost major clients, his reputation was in tatters, and he faced potential legal exposure for his role in the incident. When video emerged of him making racially charged comments to another passenger while waiting for Jamal to be removed, the final threads of his public defense unraveled. Meanwhile, the Flight Watch app had expanded to track all forms of transportation discrimination, becoming a powerful tool for accountability across industries. Jamal's company secured the major European partnership despite the controversy, or perhaps because of the principled stand he had taken. As one airline after another announced new anti-discrimination initiatives, it became clear that the industry was undergoing a fundamental transformation. What had begun as one man's humiliation in Seat 1A had catalyzed a corporate revolution that would reshape the experience of air travel for millions of passengers. 6 months after the incident that sparked a national conversation about discrimination in air travel, Jamal Washington stood in the boarding area of Gate C-12 at O'Hare International Airport. The Wingspan Airlines flight to New York would be his first time flying with the carrier since that fateful day. The terminal looked the same, but almost everything else had changed. Prominently displayed at the gate was the new Passenger Equality Commitment, a clearly worded document explaining every traveler's right to equal treatment regardless of race, religion, or ethnicity. Digital screens displayed real-time statistics on seat reassignments, categorized by demographic data to ensure transparency. Most significantly, the gate agents and flight attendants now wore pins with the words, "Dignity First," a visible symbol of the airline's transformed priorities. As boarding began, the gate agent made an announcement unlike any Jamal had heard before. Wingspan Airlines welcomes our passengers to flight WS-1422 to New York. Before boarding, we want to acknowledge that historically, air travel has not been an equitable experience for all. Wingspan is committed to ensuring every passenger receives equal dignity and respect. If you experience or witness any concerns, our cabin crew and customer advocates are here to help. When Jamal's Diamond Status Group was called, he approached the podium with a mix of emotions, apprehension, determination, and hope that genuine change was possible. "Good morning, Dr. Washington," the gate agent greeted him warmly. "We're honored to have you with us today. Your assigned seat is 1A. Karen Hoffman, our lead flight attendant, will escort you to your seat." Karen stood waiting at the jet bridge entrance. 6 months ago, she had participated in his removal. Today, she was one of Wingspan's most effective anti-bias trainers, using her first-hand experience to help other crew members recognize and interrupt discriminatory patterns. "Dr. Washington," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for giving Wingspan the opportunity to demonstrate our commitment to change." As they walked down the jet bridge together, Karen explained some of the transformations that had occurred. "Every crew member has completed intensive anti-bias training. We've implemented the Washington Protocol for resolving seating disputes fairly. Most importantly, the passenger profile system has been completely dismantled and replaced with a transparent accommodation system that focuses solely on genuine medical needs." Aboard the aircraft, Jamal was introduced to the captain, a familiar face that took him by surprise. "Captain Deshaun Morris," the pilot said with a broad smile. "Wingspan rehired me after the congressional hearings. There are quite a few of us who got our jobs back. It's an honor to fly with you today, Dr. Washington." As Jamal settled into Seat 1A, the same seat that had been the flashpoint of controversy, he noticed significant changes in the cabin. The crew was notably diverse. The passenger rights document was visible on each seatback screen. A designated passenger advocate was identified during the safety briefing as a resource for any concerns about fair treatment. Before takeoff, the captain made an unusual announcement over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, Wingspan Airlines wishes to extend a formal public apology to Dr. Jamal Washington, who is traveling with us in Seat 1A today. 6 months ago, on this very route, Dr. Washington was wrongfully removed from his rightfully assigned seat due to discriminatory practices that our company had allowed to develop. His courage in standing up for equal treatment has transformed not just Wingspan, but the entire aviation industry. We are committed to ensuring such discrimination never happens again. The cabin erupted in spontaneous applause. Several passengers turned to acknowledge Jamal with respectful nods or supportive smiles. It was a powerful moment of public recognition and restoration. As the flight reached cruising altitude, Jamal was surprised when Congresswoman Lisa Montgomery emerged from the business class cabin and approached his seat. "Dr. Washington," she greeted him warmly. "I thought I might find you on this flight. I wanted to share some news in person." The Equitable Transportation Act passed committee yesterday. It codifies many of the Fair Skies protections into federal law and establishes ongoing oversight mechanisms. Your testimony was instrumental in building bipartisan support. "That's remarkable progress," Jamal acknowledged. "How soon until implementation?" "The full House votes next week, with Senate action expected before the month's end." Airlines are actually supporting it. They're finding that standardized equity practices are good for business. Wingspan's passenger numbers are up 23% since implementing your protocols. As they discussed the legislation's details, Jamal noticed a familiar figure in economy class, Maxwell Whitfield, now stripped of his executive position and apparent privileges. Their eyes met briefly, and Whitfield quickly looked away, the power dynamic between them irrevocably altered. When Congresswoman Montgomery returned to her seat, Karen approached with a tablet. "Dr. Washington, Thomas asked me to share our latest metrics with you. The independent audit confirmed 0 reported incidents of discriminatory seat reassignment across all Wingspan flights for the past 2 months. The Washington Protocol has been officially adopted by 11 other airlines. These were measurable, tangible results. Proof that structural change was possible when confronted with moral courage and sustained pressure." As Jamal reviewed the data, he reflected on the personal cost of his stand. The death threats had eventually subsided. His company had not only survived but thrived, with clients specifically seeking partnerships based on shared values. His daughter Aisha had returned to school, now proudly telling classmates about her father's impact on civil rights. As the flight began its descent into New York, a young black entrepreneur from several rows back stopped by Jamal's seat. "Dr. Washington, I just wanted to thank you. I travel weekly for my tech startup, and the difference in how I'm treated now is night and day. Last year, I was asked to move from my upgraded seat 3 different times. Since the changes you helped implement, not once. You've changed the travel experience for people who look like us." Jamal was deeply moved by this tangible evidence that his stand had improved others' lives. "That's why this fight mattered," he replied. "Not just for me, but for everyone who deserves equal dignity." When the plane landed at JFK, another surprise awaited Jamal. The investor meeting that had been postponed 6 months earlier due to his removal from the flight was now back on schedule, with expanded scope. NetSecure CEO Dieter van Hoven greeted him personally at the arrival gate. "Dr. Washington, our board has unanimously approved not just the partnership we discussed previously, but a full strategic alliance. Your leadership during this crisis demonstrated values alignment that our European clients find compelling." The meeting that followed exceeded all expectations. What had begun as a potential partnership evolved into a global expansion strategy that would increase CyberShield's market reach by over 200%. Investors who had initially hesitated due to controversy concerns, now eagerly cited Jamal's principled stand as a key factor in their decision to invest. Later that evening, at his hotel overlooking Central Park, Jamal participated in a video conference with the independent ethics board he now chaired at Wingspan. The diverse group included civil rights attorneys, airline industry veterans, and passenger advocates. "The metrics are encouraging," noted Benjamin Turner, who had joined the board after the resolution of the class action lawsuit. Passenger satisfaction scores among minority travelers are up 47%. Employee retention has improved by 32%. The financial turnaround has been even more dramatic than projected. Thomas Bailey, now 6 months into his role as Wingspan CEO, shared additional perspective. What we're learning is that treating people with dignity isn't just morally right, it's good business. Our costs from passenger complaints and litigation have dropped substantially. Employee morale has transformed our service quality. After the meeting concluded, Jamal stood at his hotel window, reflecting on the journey of the past 6 months. What had begun with humiliation and bloodshed had transformed into a movement for change that extended far beyond one airline or incident. His phone buzzed with a message from Aisha: "Dad, we're studying your case in my social justice class. Teacher says it's going to be in history books as a turning point. So proud of you." Jamal smiled. The historical significance hadn't been his motivation, but knowing that future generations would learn about this transformation gave deeper meaning to the struggle. The next morning, as he prepared to return to Chicago, Jamal checked the FlightWatch app. Over 20,000 reports had been logged, creating an unprecedented database of transportation experiences that was driving policy changes across the industry. What had begun as a tool for accountability had evolved into a powerful mechanism for ongoing transformation. Boarding his return flight, Jamal noticed a subtle but significant difference in the atmosphere. Passengers of all backgrounds moved through the cabin with equal confidence, no longer braced for potential humiliation or removal. Flight attendants interacted with travelers without the implicit biases that had previously colored such encounters. The Washington Protocol had created a new normal where equality wasn't just aspired to but expected and enforced. As the plane accelerated down the runway, Jamal thought about how a single moment of standing his ground in Seat 1A had catalyzed change far beyond anything he could have imagined. His refusal to accept discrimination hadn't just restored his own dignity. It had created systemic transformation that would benefit countless travelers for generations to come. What would you do if faced with discrimination while traveling? Would you stand your ground like Jamal did? Have you witnessed or experienced similar situations? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that standing up against injustice can create real change. Thank you for joining me on this journey from humiliation to transformation, a reminder that one person's courage can truly change the world. Jamal Washington's story teaches us that standing up against discrimination, even at personal cost, can lead to systemic change. His refusal to surrender his rightful seat wasn't just about comfort, it was about human dignity and equality. The incident reveals how discrimination often hides behind corporate policies and coded language, making it harder to identify and address. True change requires both individual courage and collective action. While Jamal's stand was the catalyst, lasting transformation came through collaboration across organizations, industries, and government. The Washington Protocol succeeded because it created transparent systems with real accountability. This story also demonstrates that moral leadership and business success aren't mutually exclusive. Companies that embraced equity found it actually improved their bottom line through better employee morale, customer satisfaction, and reduced litigation costs. Perhaps most importantly, we learned that confronting injustice isn't about punishment, but transformation. Jamal focused not on vilifying individuals but on changing the systems that enabled discriminatory behavior. His approach united rather than divided, creating allies even among those who initially participated in his mistreatment. The path to equality requires persistence, strategic thinking, and a focus on structural reform rather than symbolic gestures. Has discrimination ever touched your life or someone you know? What did you do in that moment? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Have you witnessed discriminatory practices while traveling that need exposure? Share your experiences and let's continue building awareness together. If you found Jamal's journey from humiliation to transformation inspiring, please hit that subscribe button and join our community dedicated to sharing powerful stories of resilience and change. Give this video a thumbs up if you believe in standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Share this video with someone who needs courage to face injustice or with organizations that could benefit from examining their own practices. Together, we can create a world where dignity isn't determined by the color of someone's skin. Thank you for witnessing this story of courage, accountability, and transformation. Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to move.